Hello, and welcome to the Rollwise Podcast, your show where we talk about RPG games and things related. I'm Mike, one of your hosts, and I'm here with my two good friends, Brent, Jeff.
Hey everyone.
So today, and it's actually kind of interesting because we're starting a new campaign, and those of you that have looked on our Age of Worms game, we're actually taking the campaign Age of Worms, playing through it as much as I can take two people through the game, and we're actually going to be using kind of a multi-system approach, putting all the different D&D type games in there to see how they stack up to heroic fantasy and what appears to be a very sprawling campaign setup. Now, admittedly, having two people in a campaign of this magnitude is hard, but we're going to give it a try. So that being said, we thought we would actually talk about character backstories a little, because this is the kind of game that has a lot of depth to it, especially in the world of Greyhawk. Those people that are really big Greyhawk fans know there's a lot of story to go around. A lot of places, a lot of people, a lot of campaign style stuff that's happened there. So there's really a lot to build from. But more of the question becomes is how do you, as a player, create a backstory that is not insane but then also gives a backstory, gives your dungeon master or something like that some seeds in which they can help involve you in the adventure, help grow some additional stories that may not have been part of the original plot, and engage in a way that's fun and organic. So, what do you guys say? Backgrounds? Shall we get started? Right.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
So first things first, character backgrounds. Now, on one hand, you have the character background where somebody has written a backstory. Has anybody written a backstory for one of your games that you just like showed up and you're like, you just can't do that?
I don't know
I
if sorry, go ahead, Brent.
No, go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
I've seen a couple. I don't know if I ever thought you can't do that, but I've seen people show up with like 4 or 5 detailed pages of history written, like it was kind of like a short story. And sometimes there's some really cool things in there, and sometimes there's a lot of esoteric information that doesn't really tie into anything other than the character and the motivation. Like sometimes it's a better thing for the person to develop the personality of the character than it is a tool to help tie the threads between the players and the setting that the GM can use.
Yeah.
So I think there's a couple of different paths you can take, and I think a lot of players take the one of trying to make their character feel unique and special, which is great, but not always helpful to have those really cool tie-ins that the GM can pull out of their quiver.
I have never had somebody show up to the table with one that I was just like, no, you can't use that. I have discussed with people backstories that I kind of help them with, where it's like, you maybe not want to put something in so specific. Part of the good of like my group is I've role played with the same people for quite a while, and we all kind of have developed the same sort of like philosophy regarding backgrounds. But there have definitely been times where like the background has been so elaborate that it's really made the game complicated because there's no reason that character would interact with the other characters based on their like background. And that's always been a thing that's kind of hard sometimes, but we managed to shoehorn them in there somehow.
Yeah. So and it's always kind of interesting because there's a couple things that at least when I was a younger player, we had people that were looking at heroic fantasy and D&D, and our main jam at the time was D&D and everything like that. But you'd every once in a while have somebody show up to the table. We're like, okay, bring your level 1 created characters to the table, and then somebody would show up and they'd be like, I'm having a hard time reading this, but does this say Vorpal sword? Something like that. They're like, yeah, it's a family heirloom. If you want to read my backstory, I tell you exactly how I inherited this super powerful weapon as a first level character.
Do players past the age like high school age maybe like try to get super powerful magical weapons in as family heirlooms?
I'm sure there are, yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised. I know that was when I was younger that this was happening.
But I mean, you're also in an Age of Worms comes from this age where traditional like traditional games, which we don't always play as often anymore. At least I
Right.
don't. It kind of encourage, like they kind of come with that idea that this is what you're going to do, is you're going to write a small or long short story about your character, and you're going to like know all these ins and outs of this character, and it's kind of encouraged. And that's where you run into like the problems, where it was like, oh, there's way too much about this character that's already like, you're not going to learn anything while you're playing this character because
You've already
know,
established that.
yeah, you've already established so much.
Well,
Oh, and then there's the other way. There's the traditional background of adventurers, shadowrunners, and other people of, yeah, my family's all dead. My city was burned to the ground, and I'm the last member of my
The
clan.
orphan with no home.
I
Yeah,
have no attachments to the world except for getting
yeah.
money, and
I have an enormous amount of baggage. And
like you can
and no
create a
one that I care
really
about.
interesting character out of that mess, but it's hard to have any give the DM any sort of fuel to use to tie you into the story
Well, I
that
mean,
you're weaving together.
Well, the thing with the blank slate characters is everything that happens in the character ties them into the story, because they don't have anything to cement them into anything.
Okay.
So like the character, like the one strength about that sort of background, like I make fun of it because it's such a like cliche in role playing, but one of the strengths of it is, oh, I don't have a family, so my family is the other player characters, and they become my family. And so, like, growing from the blank slate is so easy. That's one of the reasons why I usually suggest, usually when I make a character, or like I encourage players, like, just make a few things that kind of give you an idea of the personality of your character, or things that they've done in the past, and then why they're doing what they're doing now, or what they need now.
Yeah, and I think that these, there are obviously various things that you can do, and it's funny about your, and I hate to say edgelord. It feels like my parents are dead, everybody I know and once loved is dead, but then there's that character that's just like, and I found their murderer and killed them, and now I'm at this bar. So it's like you immediately took the one possible threat out of their backstory, and they took care of it off screen. Therefore, like, now what does this backstory do other than?
But I mean, you can work with that. Like,
you could now
if you killed somebody in your backstory, like, there's probably people that care that you killed that person.
Maybe.
So as a GM, that's how I would work with it. But I think the blank slate is better than, my name is Grimthar. I kill dragons and men, and I've wooed all the women of the seven seas, and I'm a legendary sword master. And it's like, well, you're level 1. So probably not.
So
what you are is delusional, actually, is what you are.
Well, hey, they are trying to take that dream and project it out into reality, right?
Yeah,
that's where they're gonna be, Brent. That's where they're gonna be.
That's where, yeah. But when they say like the Vorpal sword
this is my
story,
backstory.
Yeah, it's my backstory. It's like, you're gonna have a hard time in this game, I think.
Yeah, no, it's pretty good, and I think that when we because we had talked a little bit about character backstories, one of our earlier episodes, and I think one of the simplest ways for you to get started is just literally like who they are, what they do, and what do they want.
Yeah. If you don't want somebody to write a backstory that doesn't fit into your game, the way to do it is to ask questions, or provide a list of questions that they're trying to answer. And that way, instead of them writing a short novel about this Mary Sue character that they think is fantastic, they just need to answer, like, because really, to play a character, you just need to know a few things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
to make, and
honestly, the what do you want question is the easiest way to understand why your character is doing anything in the game.
Or even more direct than that, why does your character need $10,000?
True. Funding his mushroom research is easy.
Exactly. Like, that's one of the most direct reasons to put a person inside, is like, why do you need this money now and need it fast? Right. And it puts the person directly into the whatever you have them doing. So yeah.
I was just going to say, I appreciate some of the newer games that we've played that have some of these types of questions baked into the rules, especially the ones that kind of help tie some strings between party members. I appreciate that. It's an interesting concept to explore, and it does give the DM some strings that they can tug on, and some bonds that are there other than we're all adventuring together because we met in a bar.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Benji had mentioned it before. It's like sometimes the adventuring group is just that group of friends that doesn't remember why they hang out together. They just do.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and
Yeah,
so
and sometimes that's fine. But
Sometimes it
like
is.
sometimes it's nice to have stuff. Like that's one of the reasons why I really like the Delta Green method of like what are your bonds that you can torture with your incoming insanity.
I'm a dump.
Um yeah, or who can you trauma dump on? Yeah. But it really lets you flesh out the character, and really you flesh out the character pretty quick.
Mhm.
Like your two characters is kind of a really opened my eyes up a lot to just like picking like, okay, who do you confide in with all this crazy shit that's happening in your life?
Mhm.
um who do you not text when you who do you text the bad news to when you have to go out to the cabin at 6 at night?
Yeah, going out there at dusk was not the best fun. Just saying.
So, horror movies take place at night, right? Well, we should get there just before, like 5 minutes before. We'll be fine.
I think it was making promises that on a business trip that were the mistake in that case.
That's true.
Sure, we can go to that party. Sorry, I can't make it to the party.
Yeah, I have some work thing that's come up because they're going to reinstate me, so I'm lying to horribly. And I rolled terribly, so you understand that I'm lying too, and we're just accepting it. This is
Yeah.
like the horrible end of a marriage kind of conversation.
Which is a Delta Green thing. So, it worked
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, it
So
does.
what kinds of things are we going to rely on for our campaign? How do we want to handle this?
Well, so we have several different ways that we can do this. You guys can either take the table setting approach, the ice cream approach, or the knives approach. I think I'm voting for knives because Brent obviously knows I like the knives approach.
Because you
Um,
like to stab the players over and over again with them.
Well,
Gotcha.
plot hooks are always good.
No, plot are always good.
The other two you'll have to explain. You should probably explain to everybody though.
Okay, so let's just give a basic thing because
Yeah.
obviously people have advanced the concept of tabletop RPGs so much that there's great advice buried through the annals of Reddit, various forums. Like, I mean, if you go digging, you can find some really great RPG advice that may have been overlooked, may have um, may have come and gone in fashion and stuff like that. Now it's coming back because it's really good advice. It just type of games we play or change or something like that. But let's start with the different table setting things here because this is actually coming from a Reddit thread that's a few years old now, but it's a person who had effectively decided that um, they had like their players got together and they decided that they had knives, and what the characters did in order to kind of more develop a backstory is that they basically said, okay, well there's a list of backstory items that you can have, kind of like an inventory. And every one of those character items turns into a knife that you can give to your DM. And the idea is that jokingly and tongue in cheek, the idea is the DM can then use that knife against you at some point. And so, like the more knives that a player has, for example, the easier it is for the GM to weave that into the story. Now, an example would be is that if you have a phobia or trauma your character has experienced, that's one knife. So as a DM, I can say, oh, this is a great time for me to spotlight Brent's character because he's told me his character has a phobia of, you know, merfolk as a dwarf. I don't know.
Sure.
But you know what I'm saying? So,
You
whatever.
mean or your frog person is afraid of the water and can't swim.
Yeah, exactly. That was the Dagger Heart character. He was a frog, can't swim, afraid of the water. That's a knife. So, because now, how do you incorporate that into the game? However, there are other ones, and so the spoons approach, the one with the ice cream and everything like that, this one isn't as detailed as the knives approach, but it's basically a way for everyone to kind of add flourishes to their character. Um, and so, if you want to give yourself a lot of deep plot points, everything like that. The knives is perfect for that. However, the spoons is for like, well, how do you, like, as a character, like, tell us little things about them. And the examples that they provide is that they say, well, like, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? What's a joke that you laugh at every time? Do you have a favorite drinking song? simple things like that, those kind of questions that add touches to it. And I hate to say this, but this sounds more like a meeting icebreaker from back in corporate land. Like, take 4 M&Ms. Oh, you have a yellow M&M. Tell us one sport that your character enjoys playing. Like those kind of things. And maybe icebreakers are good fodder because it allows you to that kind of thing. And then the last one is the table setting approach, and it's basically like you have a table setting, a bowl. It's got a bowl, plates, spoons, knives, forks, all those kind of things, and each represents a different component of the character. The bowl is the core value to your character, the things that they hold most dear. Example they give for this being like your character wants to avoid poverty at all costs. So as an adventurer, they adventure to have money so that they don't ever sleep in the street or something like that, et cetera, et cetera, until you have kind of a defined person who's motivated by certain things, um, forks in their lives that they've taken, so that like as a child you had this, as a before you got into your adventuring career you had this, and so stuff that the DM can also use in a similar way to the knives and all that kind of stuff. And then of course the knives are the loose strings that can haunt you, kind of thing. So all of them are incredibly valid and interesting, but I thought because we were playing the Sage of Worms game and there's a lot of plots and a lot of ways to tie you guys into the adventure, the knife would be an approach to try to see how effective it was and test my mettle as a GM to use the seeds you give me to plant fun adventures, plant fun stories later down the road. What do you guys think?
Sure, we can try the knives method.
Yeah, whatever you like.
Or you guys can just do one fear, one goal, and one significant character. That's the other backstory one that I've heard pretty popular.
I mean, yeah. I feel personally when I'm running a game, I prefer simpler backstories to more complex ones.
Concise.
Just because if somebody really elaborates, I feel like trying to tie their idea of who their character into what's moving forward is kind of hard sometimes. But maybe I'm a little too railroady sometimes too. So,
well, and I think in like one shots and stuff like that, these kind of questions become a little bit tricky. Like short adventures, one shots, like having too much depth to your character. I feel like going the who you are, what you do, and why do you do things is more applicable to like a short adventure than it is a campaign. I think the campaign gives the GM plenty of time to take that seed, invest it somewhere later down the road, because time, hopefully. But that's just my thought. You guys think?
Yeah.
Okay, so for knives and everything like that, basically it's simple. Your goal is to have between 7 and 12 knives. 12 being like the upper limit. No, you wouldn't want to have so many knives that it became a hindrance. Like you walk into Diamond Lake and like 14 people want to kill you on sight. 35 people, have your children, and so you have to do something about like child custody and all that kind of stuff. So too many could be bad, but like just to write a number is what they've discovered according to that. So would you want to kind of go through and discuss like what they have for example?
Yeah, that'd be good. Discussing what they have would be good.
Yeah, let's go through them and I'll see if I can give you anything for my character that doesn't even have a name at this point.
Yeah, this will be something that we probably have to do homework on. So,
well, I'll try and go live.
I have a lot of homework myself, so I'm not bad about giving you guys.
Well, you're the GM. You're supposed to have homework.
Yeah, the GM always gets homework.
Yeah, players just show up and play a fun
no nights
game.
or weekends off for the GM.
Well, I told you that one person's anecdote about telling your players to read stuff. And his advice.
I'm just asking you to dream about this every week.
The GM needs 60 hours of prep work, and if the players got to do 30 minutes, they're all like, "Oh, I couldn't possibly."
Yeah. Sometimes it's how it feels.
More likely, it's I didn't. Not I couldn't.
Didn't.
It was just I didn't.
I didn't.
All right.
I know you asked. I said no.
So about this approach, the first thing that they suggest is every named person your character cares about, living or dead, i.e., a sibling, a spouse, a childhood friend, professional relationship, is one knife.
So Brent is going to pick no one.
I just think anytime you say every named person your character cares about,
Every person is a knife, or all of the people together are one knife.
every one is a knife.
Everyone is a knife, but you can put you can bundle it into a big knife. I'm not sure technically what the difference between a big knife and a small knife is.
Well, like your mom and dad would be one knife. Your mom
Yeah,
and
but
dad or
You just say
family
parents.
or
Yeah.
family would be one knife. But if you could separate them and be like mom and dad, brother.
yeah. And
Dog.
this is a good place for you to have like the people you care about the most. If you want it to be someone in town, like we had discussed earlier, that you, Jeff, have a really good connection to the town based on here, which was that Alistan would be like your mentor.
Yeah. No, I have Alistan down.
Okay, so
Who's
he
the
would
dude?
be.
Who's the dwarf dude that I work for again?
And I was going to say, there's actually two options that we could have because as I was reading through, I did totally miss the Graysmere Covenant, which is basically dwarves that are from out of town that have taken up residence here. In terms of like they're the more traditional dwarf. However, there is the mine operator, and his name is Dowerstone, Rangelin Dowerstone. There's some options for you to kind of choose there.
Yeah, I've got Alistan and my parents.
Okay. Now, I don't need much to know about them, but I would like to know if they're in Diamond Lake or elsewhere. That would.
I think that they are elsewhere, probably in a gnome village.
Okay. Well, we could figure.
But probably not too far away.
Sure. More just care if they're like in the immediate vicinity and you go have supper with them every night, or
No, I visit them when I can, but they're close enough to visit, but not
far
every
enough.
night or every weekend kind of thing.
They're not close enough that they're a nuisance.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
Sorry, is that too generic?
No, this is not supposed to be super detailed. Of course, there may be some clarifying questions we can ask as we go to like help understand. Like I said, if they are if they're parents that live with you in Diamond Lake, then that could be a sharper knife than parents that live
Sure,
3 days
100%.
away, kind of thing.
No, I figured that my apprenticeship to Alistan is 90% of my time kind of job.
Okay. And then as we go through, we could also ask questions like, so you still talk to your parents and all that then?
Yes.
Okay.
Probably write a lot of letters.
All right. Letters off. Sounds good. And then Brent, you working for Dowerstone, Rangelin Dowerstone, Ragnolin Dowerstone.
Rangolin?
Ragnolin. Ragnolin. Mine manager at.
Because I had him as Ranglin before, so Rangnolan makes more sense.
Yeah.
Dowerstone, gotcha. And he's the mine boss, right?
He's one of the mine bosses. There are actually several mine bosses. Diamond Lake. This happens to be the dwarven mine boss.
Gotcha. I have him on there.
Okay. How close do you think your relationship to him is? You had mentioned that you were like a guard.
He's my boss.
Or in name, but like you're not like a trusted confidant.
So not close at all, Brent.
You're just like.
No. I mean, he trusts me. I guard his mine, but we're not like friends. He pays me.
More of a business relationship than like a personal friendship.
Yeah, and I definitely consider bosses knives.
Bosses are knives.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. figure it out.
All right, so here's what I got. Father, I don't have a name for him yet. That'll take a bit. His father is alive, living in Diamond Lake. He's a blacksmith in Diamond Lake. My mother passed away in our travels to Diamond Lake. So basically, our family came to Diamond Lake for his blacksmithing job. Dowerstone, I have a job at Dowerstone the Guard because my grandfather also doesn't have a name yet. My grandfather is teaching me how to be like a fighter because he was a soldier in some wars at some point. So it's my dad, my grandfather, and me in Diamond Lake. I was not a good blacksmith.
Fair enough.
And so I had to find other ways to make money. So I became a guard since I know how to fight because of my grandfather. My father isn't always super happy about that.
Fair enough.
And my mother passed away on the way here.
Gotcha. You have
how can
three knives from that every name. Is that correct?
Well, that's 4 because the death of my mother would be a knife. So that's the father, the mother passing away because it said alive or dead. That's Dowerstone, and that's my grandfather.
Okay. So 2 knives for Jeff. 4 knives for Brent. We might combine. We'll see. Every phobia, trauma, character experiences or has experiences. How many Batman style characters out of this?
None. I would tell somebody no.
No, it feels like it's used too often, like way too often. But I mean, whatever motivates you.
Batman doesn't work well in a group, and this is a role playing game. That's why I would usually say no.
No, I'm just saying it's just like whatever.
He was definitely in the Justice League.
He was definitely in the Justice League, and he also had ways to kill everybody in the Justice League too.
He did, I recall. Just in case. Just in case.
Yeah.
Hey, exactly. Somebody needed to have the backup plan. That's all I'm saying.
So yeah.
But yeah, no, he does. No, Batman doesn't necessarily work well and stuff like this.
I was saying or bad experience. So do you have have you guys thought maybe there would be a phobia or trauma that your character would have internalized at this life?
No.
Okay.
I would need to work on that. I would need to think about that.
Well, you don't have to have these either. I mean, I find
well, no, yeah, we can choose to pass. I'm just trying to.
Here's what I would say honestly. If I would expect my players to come up with 5 good ones. If I asked them to do 7, I would expect them to have maybe 5 good ones. Personally.
Well, and they could get better. They could get honed before the game. As you kind of think about them offline and stuff like that. Because like a trauma,
I don't think I have a trauma, but I do think that being a gnome, I do think that I'm afraid of exceedingly large individuals. Like if I was a child, I'd just say giants, even though I don't specifically mean the races of giants. They're the
Okay. So in this town, there's actually an inn called the Spinning Giant. And it's because that there was a young giantess that was captured by the garrison years ago that was given to the proprietor and to serve as a mascot for this place. And so on the front, there's like there's basically a big painting or something like that, and it shows kind of like this.
Right. I'm just going to go with a fear of giants, Mike. We'll figure out how we work it in.
Okay, I'm just saying, like, does that kind of place scare you away because there's actually like a
because of the sign? Giant. Yes, I mean less so now that I'm a little older. The fear is probably a little more irrational, like at night or in the dark or when it's unexpected, or like if I round a corner and bump into somebody that is twice as tall as I am.
Okay, sure.
Right. What else is there? Traumas. What else?
Yeah,
Um,
but I'm not picking a trauma. I just don't feel like going there.
every mystery in your character's life, i.e., unknown parents, unexplained powers. I don't really have any unexplained powers.
You might as well just list them off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Like
no,
the
yeah, it
example.
doesn't hurt to list them. I
Yeah.
don't. Are you picking
Every
something off of that one, Brent?
No.
I
every
don't think I am
enemy
either.
your character has, every ongoing obligation or loyalty your character has. So in this case, the obligation, Brent, could be for the job that you have, and of course, Jeff, you could take that
Yeah, I
as
would say it's my
loyalty.
apprenticeship.
Yeah, I feel less obligated to that if something comes up. So I don't necessarily know if that's a thing.
That's fair. You have a boss, but you don't necessarily have an obligation as well.
Yeah, I feel
I'm
like
just
there.
saying, if something
Sorry.
better, if something better comes along, I feel like my character would be like, no, I could do that instead.
Okay.
He can get more he can get more mind guards. I feel like that's a commodity that he can probably
Yeah, the
find.
town.
But doing something that would leave town would be better for me.
All right. Even though I want to leave town, Mike, I do feel that I appreciate the effort that was taken by by my parents to help me get this apprenticeship.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And the work that I had to put in to get it. That is something that ties me to the community, even if ultimately I don't feel that my future is here.
Sure. Um,
My character feels like he has something to prove, almost to the point of recklessness. And that he has bigger things in store for himself than being a town guard.
okay. Perfect. All right. So next on the list, every obligation your character has failed.
Oh, okay.
You have some failed obligations, Brent?
brewer, failed blacksmith apprentice.
Oh, you're just going with all the job like
It's all
okay.
job failures.
I feel like me and my wife just started watching the show Psych. You guys ever watch that?
Mm-mm.
I watched Psych when it was on. Was it USA
Yeah.
originally? Yeah,
Back in
yeah.
the
No,
day.
I watched the first few seasons and then I fell out of touch with it. But everything that I've ever seen with Psych is actually really well written and really well acted.
It is a
Surprise.
surprisingly good like procedural detective show considering the premise is so silly. Um but like in the beginning they basically show, Sean Spencer the psychic detective, obviously not psychic, just experiment. And they talk about his previous jobs and he has like, 1,000 different jobs that they can choose from because he literally was just turning over jobs after a few weeks to be like, I learned everything I needed from that job and I moved on. you know so like
Well, I just think, like I said, I just think he's bad. He was just bad at them. Really, my character, that's why I think the trade skill in DC 20 is interesting because
Mhm.
really, your adventurer character isn't doing any of those things. So either he wasn't good at them, or he was good at them and decided to do something insanely dangerous instead. So I feel like my character just wasn't good at them. Maybe it was due
Well,
to lack of interest. Maybe it was because he's just not good at them. But he knows things about them.
yeah,
He
you have
just
a way
doesn't.
about them, you just aren't
Yeah,
an
he just
expert.
doesn't do them very
Okay.
well.
The
So yeah,
obligations.
so failed brewer and failed blacksmith is on there.
Okay. It's your
I think right
who's your
now I
fail for
don't
the
have any
brewer?
failed obligations, Mike. But as we go through this, I may have one. Like the apprenticeship may shift to that if it looks like I'm going to be.
I have a friend in town who is a brewer. I'm not putting him as a thing on here because he's just kind of a loose friend. But I worked under him and I messed up like one whole like batch of beer that was supposed to be for somebody, and so it didn't work out.
That's a big mistake. I mean, you don't make that kind of stuff in small batches.
Right, exactly. And then the blacksmith apprentice, my father was my who I was learning from there, and so there's a little bit of family disappointment there. So
Okay.
It sounds like that's good fodder. Okay. Okay. Um
and that's 7 for me actually.
all right.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
you can go
4
all
for
the way up
me.
to all the way up to 12 and still feel comfortable.
So yeah,
Um
what else?
so every serious crime your character has committed.
Oh, there's 12. Just kidding.
murder, arson, embezzlement,
Not
forgery,
th- not this
person.
character. Not this
That
character.
society would define as serious, or that I would personally define as serious? I'm kidding. That's
It's
a
just
bad
society.
joke.
I guess a sociopath wouldn't be a good
Yeah, my
litmus test
character
for
does
this.
not think that any of the bodies they've buried in the garden constitute a serious crime.
Those were necessary slayings.
No, I'm not. My character is not a sociopath. I don't think I've committed any severe crimes.
That's fine. I was actually just thinking about it, and I don't think in the DC 20 book I saw any kind of like morality or alignment or any kind of thing like that. Did you guys see that? Like,
No, there's no alignment. Most
Hmm.
most
I mean,
of the newer games don't have.
yeah, that's interesting. I guess I was just thinking about it because obviously we're playing a game that's heavily based on 3.5, and so every NPC has got an alignment that makes no sense.
Hey, Mike, you know what? I do have one. You know
Oh.
what? Okay, so there was a test involved in the apprenticeship. There was somebody else in my village that was also up for the same apprenticeship, and I was accused of cheating on the test.
Oh, okay.
And I was exonerated from cheating on the test. And in
Okay.
fact, I did actually cheat on the test. Is that too convoluted?
No,
That's pretty straightforward.
So,
Okay.
so basically, your knife here is either the people, like the person that you cheated, aka your fellow gnome or whatever they end up being, or the people that proctored this, aka the wizard who was an apprentice. Saying like it's got a few different ways that can.
There's different ways you could go.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it was big cheating, but I cheated.
Fair enough. Looked at the answer key. Gotcha. So now there is an option if for every crime your character is falsely accused of. Also, another option is of actually committing crimes.
I thought about just being falsely accused, but I think it's more interesting if the guilt is eating at me. Because for the most part, I am an honest character, but my parents worked really hard to get me this apprenticeship.
Also, for the folks watching, we should probably remind everybody that my character is a dwarven fighter in the DC 20 system, so that's where these background elements are kind of coming from.
Yeah,
sure.
I'm a gnome wizard.
Yeah.
So,
just for you guys out there listening.
Yeah. Probably should have done that at the beginning. So anybody that was just kind of confused for the last 15 minutes is like, what the hell are these characters?
We hope we cleared that up for you.
Yeah. Since the show is unscripted, other than some apparently notes for me to remember what the questions were for this knife fighting thing. We're just going off the top. So, okay, back to the questions. If your character is a serial killer or the leader of a thieves guild.
Seriously? Are you making that up?
Is that really one of the things?
Well, it's in the list. I mean, I just copied and
Seriously?
pasted.
Okay, no, I thought I already said I was not a sociopath or a psychopath.
Any discrimination experienced, i.e. fantasy racism. Now, I don't think fantasy racism is a trope that a lot of people like to explore in their games, but sometimes, it comes up just because of the typical tropey racism that exists.
Right.
Like especially in a town like this, and it seems like Greyhawk may be a place that could have that type of thing. Because the town that you're living in is basically 98% human and then 2%.
Certain. I don't really want to. I'm going to be honest. I would rather not explore racism, but I'm certain that I have been teased for being a gnome who is shorter than some other races.
And since Greyhawk was written in the 70s, it's probably something that's come up.
Yeah, I probably haven't been teased mercilessly, you know what I mean? But there has been teasing, bullying, I guess we would call it nowadays.
Okay. Only 2 more questions really that they suggest. Because you could obviously use this to launching pad to other questions, but every favored item or heirloom. There we go. Heirloom.
A heirloom. Are we weaving our hair into blankets now, Mike?
I'm just so envious of people with hair that I just help myself. And then every secret your character is keeping.
Well, I don't want to
So,
double dip, but I am keeping this fact that I did cheat on the test.
some of these are
Found
so
innocent.
big. Some of these are so big. I think it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, some of them are big, man.
Yeah.
What
Well,
was the
I
one
mean,
before The Secret? Because I already kind of covered The Secret, so I'm not
the secret is before that
favorite
is a favorite
item.
item or heirloom. Yeah.
Yes. I have something. What do I have from my father that's been passed down? I have like my father got it when he went away to his apprenticeship, and his father had it when he went away to his apprenticeship, and that's why the apprenticeship thing hangs over my head a bit.
This is where I got my Vorpal sword.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's the Vorpal sword. I'm the Vorpal sword wielding wizard. I forgot about that. Thanks, Brent, for reminding me.
Well, so I would say is that
I was thinking something minor like a coin or a pocket watch or a belt buckle or
that 100% is what
a
they mean.
wand. Yeah, like not like a. Okay, I understand that all the wands are magical to an extent, but not like an actual named magic item. Do you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
it's not a special thing. It's special to me because
It's not your Phoenix Feather wand.
no, it is not my Phoenix Feather wand for all the Harry Potter fans out there.
I got a laugh out of Mike. That's what I was looking for.
A 9-inch oak wand with the heart of a griffin. Whatever.
Yeah, no. This is just whatever it is. It's a sturdy country oak wand. That's been used for like 5 generations of wizards in my family. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
it's the everyday wand, Mike. It's
also known as one half of a pair of chopsticks.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the story to it before.
No, but it is a family heirloom. Family heirlooms don't have to be like super valuable, right?
That would
No.
That would be such a great Shadowrun background thing to have for a character. Like you're sitting at a table and you're like, your dad is like, here, it's a wand, go do magic. And so your character just like holds on to it forever, and they're like, I think that's a chopstick from like there's like a stamp on it from the restaurant.
Yeah. Hey, all I know is that the
runes.
handle is worn smooth by generations of wizards from my family, both male and female. Okay.
Sure.
That's all I'm saying.
You know what? There could be more to this magic wand than
sure.
It could, I mean,
as far as I know, though, it's not any more special than any other wand that a wizard would use.
Sure. Perfect.
Yeah, it doesn't shoot fireballs out of it, continuously without losing charge or anything.
He doesn't know it's the wand, wand of.
No, in Mike's case, I don't know that it's a cursed wand that makes every spell I cast work not quite the way that I think that it does.
That's just how you're going to roll your dice. I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah. For anybody that wants to know how these guys' dice rolls go, is that we just finished up a Monster of the Week mystery, and I have never seen so many.
We didn't roll above a 5.
5, 6s, 4s.
For 2 hours. For 2 hours, we didn't roll above a 5. I don't.
You had like 1 or 2 successes, but the rest were just like, okay,
bad.
Keeper, see what happens when you make continuous hard and soft moves against your players.
Okay, so that gets me to 7. I have 7 that I actually feel pretty good about.
I think that also gives a pretty good gist of the knives method.
Yeah, I think it does.
And really, that's what this is to explore, is that I think that, like I said, there's good advice out there on the internet that's worth trying. Now, obviously, as a DM, I think that, you could look at the knives method and you could say, okay, well, I mean, if I'm an asshole of a DM, I'm basically there to use all these knives against you, and it can feel a little bit punishing, if that makes sense. And it shouldn't feel like you guys give me you guys give me your parents. And I don't feel like that's an appropriate use of the knife for every time we do this in a game. Your parents basically become hostages of the big bad in session 2 or something like that.
I mean, that's totally what you're going to do, but yeah, it doesn't have to be that way. You're right.
It shouldn't be that way. I mean, there's so many creative ways in which you can use these background seeds for it. But I could see how it easily becomes, well, if I want to pull the levers of these characters, obviously they care about their parents. Well, suddenly their parents are involved in the story in so much as that they've been stolen by the bad guy or they've been poisoned and they have to have an antidote delivered once every full moon or else they die and now you work for the bad guy kind of thing. Um, that would get old after a couple campaigns. I don't have any parents. Well, now they're back from the dead. Then, or
you do. They're zombies now. Good job.
yeah, they're zombies, and they still are telling you how disappointed they are in you. You know.
Yeah, and I think one suggestion I would suggest because that is what you do with a suggestion is if you have like things that you want, make sure you ask those questions. Like if you and tell them like I would much prefer you have a family member alive or something of that nature, like something that grounds you in the game. Because people like most people you game with will work with it. But yeah. And some people aren't going to be comfortable writing a really extensive background. So just ask them direct questions and usually you can get a couple things out of them.
And if you really want to give yourself the opportunity for impromptu, like this kind of activity kind of allows you to just have a spitballing session. But I also like the idea of having your background come through narratively in the game. In so much as that, like, let's say you're in a big city, you're at the bar, somebody goes, claps you on the shoulder and says, "Is that you, Grimgold? I haven't seen you since. Well, when was the last time you saw this guy? And in what context? You know what I'm saying? Like those kind of things
Sure.
can be fun on the spot.
And if you're a clever player, you say, "Oh, you must think I'm someone else," and then move on, move on out of the scene.
if you're a sour player, that's just like, I'm an edgelord. You don't know me. You must be mistaken.
Or you just attack them. You do the murder hobo method.
I'm a dark, mysterious stranger.
I punch him in the throat.
It's like, Shink, how did you know I was Grimgold?
I headbutt him.
I'm not going to take the
bait. Isn't that how dwarves greet each other in public?
He didn't say the other guy was a dwarf.
I made an assumption.
True. But I think that there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I think that this knives way, it just kind of gives me, because it is a large campaign, and I think there's plenty of opportunities for them to.
I'll write this up a little bit better and send it to you.
That's fine. Perfect. No big deal. I'll obviously send you guys clarifying questions because I think you could go back and forth on this quite a bit. But I think that there could still be some mystery between your two characters, not knowing everything about it. Now, the only other thing that obviously I would say, and this is as part of the backstories, is I always like PCs to kind of know each other prior to the game, because I feel like Brent is like shaking his head.
No, we don't know each other.
Well, I always feel like the smash together party is always harder to accomplish than the like how do you craft the party.
So it's a funny story. Like I said, I've said before, like I used to have a huge problem with that, and then I realized that that's how all my friends are. Is like, yeah, we just kind of started hanging out together.
Yeah. Well, but then there's also situations in which you could literally, like, as I've had that happen where one person's just like, you're all at the bar, monsters break in. Well, I get back to the forest. I don't know this place. Bye. You're like, oh, see you, Ranger.
You have had players do that? I have never had a player do that ever.
I have. Yeah.
That's funny.
I feel like most players spring into action.
Yeah, I've never had a player like, so in my opinion, and maybe this was for a whole episode sometime too. I have never had a player just decide not to play the game before, and that's essentially what they're doing. Most PCs will just fall in line to the point where it's ridiculous sometimes, and that's where the we meet an in joke comes from. Is like they fall in line so quickly it's ridiculous. Like it's like we meet in a bar. 2 hours later, I would trust this man with my life and to protect me from dragon's fire. But I've never had somebody just go, nah, I'm not taking this adventure.
I wake up, I'm calling in sick to work. I'm going to sleep all day. What are you doing tomorrow? The same thing for the next, like, I mean, Brent, you hit on it. It kind of, I mean, it may be playing your character, but it certainly isn't playing the game to an extent.
Yeah.
Like I'm not saying you got to pick up every plot hook that's thrown at you.
There may be like a whole episode about this, but I just think it's like I've never had somebody like, oh, you get a call from Delta Green and they send you a text and you're invited to a night at the opera. I've never had anybody go, I don't like the opera, and send the text back to them.
Well, and I've had people, have character concepts that they've started the game with, just basic ones and stuff. And then they discovered over the course of several sessions that their character just felt out of place with the group.
I have had that happen.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
sure.
And that's more common than these monsters are here. My character's a coward. I leave.
But that could happen even if you say all your characters know each other. Like,
yeah, it's
true.
This
character just doesn't fit in with what the rest of the group has done.
It's true. And this is all of these are just mitigation strategies. You'll never have, and you could have an ideal concept in your head that just doesn't pan out and play.
And there's definitely a different conversation you're having if your player is just like, nah, I don't fight these monsters with these guys I don't know, and I leave.
Yeah.
Like, there's a different conversation that needs to
Those
happen.
guys are definitely suckers. I'm out of here.
Yeah, I'm glad these guys are here to cover my retreat.
Yeah.
It's the truth. It's the truth.
And it's funny, I guess. One more thing about that. And it's funny, I guess, because I've had, like I said, like usually the players that I've had go like so far the other way. It's like, oh, well, they're losing. You should probably run. And they're like, no, I will die with these people that I just shared drinks with 2 seconds ago.
Not even shared drinks. We shared drinks near.
We were sitting at the same table for 5 minutes, and now we'll all die together. Like, it's usually like usually the players I have go like grossly the other way. It's like you could run away. Like one of the famous stories in my group about that was one of our players was playing an assassin character who got hired to kill people, and this monster said, well, if you kill this person, you can leave alive. And he's like, no. And it's like, where did these morals come from all of a sudden?
He's like,
he didn't get paid, Brent. That's where the moral line is.
Well, the payment was leaving alive.
I don't do it for free.
It's like, okay. Just funny.
That's good. That's good. So I think that what I would like to hear is if anybody has any of their own background stories, I would love to hear like what they used, what method they've tried. If, for example, they've tried this knife method, had it work, not work in a campaign. I mean, all those kind of conversations would be really fascinating to me, because I feel
helpful to other people.
Yeah. So I mean, it's an immensely interesting type thing, and this would be the kind of concept that if you guys comment enough and there's a good enough conversation, I would love to read it. And just literally based on the comments.
Yeah, and I would say that there's other methods. One of the ones that I've done in the past is have a list of questions, like 20 questions, play 20 questions amongst the players. Like, have one player ask another player, like, what do I know about your character, about where they're from? And then they get one veto or something like that. There's lots of different methods. So, yeah.
Tons. There's literally tons. So, Jeff, if they wanted to discuss that, but maybe they don't like to leave YouTube comments, what might they do?
Well, they can find us on Facebook, Threads, or Twitter. We are on YouTube under the same handle, @RollWise. Or they can email us, rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
And what an excellent leading question that was, Mike. As always, thank you, everybody, for listening. Roll well, roll wise, and be safe out there. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.